Because ours should be a higher calling than that. We should look at every race that is on the ballot, from town board, to village board, to city council, to school board, to county board, to county judgeships, and to the state superintendent of public instruction, and to our Supreme Court seat that is open. We should look to every one of these races, and we should say to ourselves, who stands to reinforce the rule of law in Wisconsin? Who runs on the principle that when they swear an oath to uphold the Constitution of Wisconsin and the Constitution of the United States, that they will, in fact, uphold that oath? That ought to be the principle that we bring to the politics of 2013. It ought to be a rule of law principle. It ought to be a Constitution principle. It ought to be a higher ideal principle. It ought not be the compromise of partisanship. It ought not be the compromise of ideology. We have lost too much in this state. And I want to tell you, I'll close off with this very basic principle as we think about the Supreme Court race. In recent weeks, the Wisconsin Assembly and the Wisconsin State Senate have, they're just going through the crowd. The Wisconsin Assembly and the Wisconsin State Senate have rewritten the rules for people who are in the galleries of the legislature. They have rewritten the rules for people who are in the galleries of the legislature. And this is what they have said. In the state of Wisconsin, it is against the rules of our state assembly and our state senate to read the Constitution of the United States during a legislative session. You are not allowed to read during a legislative session. Doesn't stop there. You cannot come and sit in the gallery of our state assembly or our state senate and wear a t-shirt that has the First Amendment of the Constitution on it, because that is a political statement. You cannot gather. You cannot gather with a group of people who agree with you, because that might be dangerous. We have new rules in the Capitol that bar the assembly of people who might dissent. If in our legislative galleries you use your right to free speech 3 times, you are expelled from those galleries, barred from entry for the entire legislative session. Do you understand that? We've created a 3 strikes and you're out rule for freedom of speech. This is the absurdity of this. It is tyranny, and this is the big deal thing. This is the big deal thing. Our state legislature has determined that it is in opposition to freedom of speech, to the right to assemble, and the right to petition for the redress of grievances. The 3 most essential rights of American citizens. I don't want to wait for the legal wrangling on those issues. I would tell you this. A Supreme Court justice in this state should say that that is unconstitutional now. They should grant an injunction to bar those rules now, because it is fundamentally wrong to bar people from using their free speech, their right to assemble, and their right to petition. If you take that right away for one day, then you undermine the basic premises of the American experiment, and you also undermine the basic premises of progressive governance. This is a fundamental struggle, brothers and sisters. This is as important as any struggle that we have been involved in over the last 2 years. We need to reestablish the rule of law in Wisconsin. We need to say once and for all that the founders of this state were right. They were right when they established nonpartisan governance of the process. They were right to say that our schools should be run on the principle of educating children, not on the principle of politics. They were right to say that our courts should not be divided into Democratic and Republican caucuses, that we should not have a court where the supposedly responsible justice defends the actions of David Prosser. We should not have a court. We should not have a court where, when faced with a basic question of law, whether the legislature must follow the open meetings laws that it itself enacted, would rule that they do not have to. This is the law and the Constitution turned on its head. Brothers and sisters, it is time for us to turn it back. It is time for us to realize that the race for Wisconsin's Supreme Court that will play out this April is the essential struggle, as important as the race for governor, as important as the race for President of the United States of America, because if we do not have a nonpartisan and responsible judiciary that stands up for the Constitution of Wisconsin and for the Constitution of the United States, then we have nothing at all. Our struggle is to restore the rule of law, brothers and sisters. It is the struggle that we have been engaged in, not 2 years. We've been engaged in this struggle since 1848. We've been engaged in this struggle with Robert M. La Follette and the Progressives, and we are engaged in it now, and we dare not fail, because if we fail, we pass on to our children and our grandchildren not merely a lesser state. We pass on to them something that has no relation whatsoever to Wisconsin. Wisconsin has always been America's North Star. Our ancestors lined up to fight in the Civil War. This state had a Jewish governor during the Civil War. This state had African Americans in positions of authority during the Civil War. This state said to the rest of the country, you can be dramatically better than you are. And it is so vital to remember. It is so vital to remember that when that Civil War came, our ancestors fought for a higher ideal than what America was. Our ancestors said, the Constitution imagined African Americans as 3/5 of human beings. We imagined African Americans as human beings. And when our ancestors went into those battles, understand this, there was a young man from the Milwaukee area who was in one of those great battalions down by Lookout Mountain. He was a corporal in the Wisconsin unit that was there. And the Wisconsinites said, well, we'll fight the front line. We'll do Missionary Ridge, the toughest of the battles. We know the Confederates are arrayed along the top of the hill. We understand that. We understand that it is almost certain death to fight this battle. But we also know that this is the battle where we broach the line and move Union troops into the South. This is where we're not talking about a movie about Abraham Lincoln. We're talking about the reality of fighting across that line to free the slaves. We're fighting for something that is redemptive for America. And the Union troops fell back. The Pennsylvanians fell back. The Illinoisans fell back. The Iowans fell back. The folks from New York fell back. The Wisconsinites took the front line of that battle. And they sent their troops up the hill, led by their officers. And the lieutenant colonels were killed. The colonels were killed. The lieutenants were killed. The sergeants were killed. And this 20-year-old corporal, Arthur MacArthur, grandfather of General Douglas MacArthur, saw the flag of Wisconsin on the ground. And he picked it up, and he grabbed that flag, and he ran toward the top of that hill, yelling, "On Wisconsin." And the members of his unit, bloodied and beaten, many of them wounded, climbed up off that ground, and they ran behind him. They fought through the rebel line, and they became the first Northerners to cross into the South for the absolutely redemptive purpose of ending the sin of human bondage in America. That is our legacy. That is who we are. We stand for a rule of law that treats all human beings as equal. And we do not allow any setback, any defeat, any difficulty to tell us something is impossible. We will redeem our state, and in so doing, we will redeem our nation, and the process begins this April when we restore to our Supreme Court the rule of law and the principle that all men are created equal, all women are created equal, and we all live by the same set of rules, by the same set of laws, by a constitution of our state and our nation that does not allow for tyranny. Solidarity, brothers and sisters. Solidarity!